Thank you for joining me for this session. My name is Dr. Carla Winters of the Interfaith Caregivers of Greater Mercer County, and I'll be leading session 2.4, low-cost strategies to implement research-based interventions to improve service outcomes. And we'll begin in just a few more moments. Okay, I see that we're about 5 minutes in. So once again, my name is Dr. Carla Winters, and this is session 2.4. I'd like to begin with expressing my gratitude to Natalie Pope, Dr. Greenfield, and all those of the Hub for Aging collaboration for their work in facilitating this event. I am fortunate enough to work in an agency that aligns with the desire to embrace innovation and incorporate research into our efforts to fight loneliness and improve other social health needs. And I am pleased to share some of our work with you today. It is important, before we get started, it is important to note that being innovative does not always equate to being effective or efficient. The smaller the size of your organization and the likely accompanying resource limitations reduce the luxury of error in this equation. My goal with our short time together today is to share some of our strategies that might serve as a springboard for you to adapt to your specific needs of your organizational mission and population. And just as an aside, there will be a complete reference list available for all the research that I use for you in the session materials. 4 ways we use research-informed interventions to improve the outcomes of our caregiving program, Neighbors Helping Neighbors. The mission of Interfaith Caregivers of Greater Mercer County is to promote the independence, dignity, and wellness of the aging population and adults with disabilities. We support people who wish to age in place, so our services do not extend to any residents of nursing homes or similar facilities. The Neighbors Helping Neighbors program is likely similar to other community-based caregiving programs in that we send screened and trained volunteers, the caregivers, into the community to serve vulnerable populations, the caregivers, by assisting with the challenges of daily life. These tasks include grocery shopping assistance, transportation to or from medical appointments, light household chores such as changing light bulbs, taking out the trash, and the like. Our volunteers also spend a great deal of time providing companionship through friendly visits or assurance calls. None of our services include medical or nursing skills. While there are aspects of our Neighbors Helping Neighbors program that operate on a needs-based system, and what I mean by this is that we have volunteers who would simply like to serve as drivers and provide transportation for several care receivers as needed. Similarly, we have volunteers who enjoy performing yard work or handy around the house and perform these services as they are requested to do so. However, the majority of our volunteer caregivers and care receivers are carefully matched based on common interests and similar information collected during the intake or application process. While there is initially a staff investment of time spent making the match, the practical payoff is that the relationship that this helps to create frequently lasts for many years. As reported by a recent report of the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, when it comes to reducing loneliness among older adults, it is important to remember that loneliness has different causes in each individual. And because of this, it is important to match the preferences of the individual and not just increase the frequency of social contact. Their recommendation is to help people enhance the quality of their relationships. And that is going to be a recurrent theme of this presentation, quality of relationships. By taking the extra step to provide matched volunteers, the likelihood of creating a quality relationship between caregiver and care receiver greatly increases. When considering that social connectedness is one of our social health needs, we must remember that the volunteer caregivers themselves are receiving a form of intervention. A study out of UNC Chapel Hill recently linked social relationships with measurable aspects of well-being, such as abdominal obesity, inflammation, and high blood pressure, all of which can lead to heart disease, stroke, and cancer, conditions that shorten the lifespan. We can conclude that aging adults live longer depending upon these social relationships. Although social relationships reduce health risks in each stage of life, the researchers found that in middle adulthood, where we are seeing the fastest increase in family caregivers, what mattered most was what those connections provided in terms of whether it was social support or a strained relationship. Our programmatic response to this is reflected in two ways. As a host site for AmeriCorps seniors, we offer volunteers the opportunity to engage not only with their care receiver, but opportunities to interact with each other. We are careful to include our volunteers in agency events, in addition to our annual appreciation event. Most recently, we hosted our mayor for AmeriCorps Week, and of course invited volunteers, mixing some of our newest volunteers with some of our longest serving ones. Social connections began immediately. There were cookies there too. We are more intentional with phone calls, reaching out to volunteers to support them, making sure that they feel included in a shared sense of purpose. Social media has also been useful to highlight the work of volunteers, as it offers them a chance to have their family members or friends provide positive feedback on the work they're doing. We also provide resources for family caregivers. This might take the form of a referral to a community support group. It might be one of our workshops we host quarterly that are open to the community, or it could be a volunteer providing respite relief for their loved one. We hope to serve as a source of support for this growing group. Fostering friendships. We've discussed facilitating quality care receiver caregiver interaction and caregiver caregiver interaction. But we've discussed facilitating quality care receiver caregiver and caregiver caregiver. But an important and easily overlooked opportunity is the potential to facilitate care receiver relationships. As we know, care groups change with retirement, and previous identity goals, such as earning money or raising a family and building a career, have changed. The change in levels of self-confidence reported in the aging compared to the last time they were challenged to make friends can be limiting. The realization that this late in life friendship making might be easiest to do when you know you are going through it together is the reason for the rise in groups such as senior meetup groups in apps such as Nextdoor and the development of senior village organizations across the country. We've had success hosting events for caregivers to bring care receivers for snacks, games, and crafts. Having the event for both parties not only provided safe transportation to the event, but also added to the initial comfort level of socialization. We keep the event light and fun as a chance to encourage laughter and socialization. At the end of the party, if it hasn't happened already, suggesting a phone number exchange. You suggesting it removes the fear of rejection for individuals who might want to suggest the same. This also allows care receivers to decline without seeming off-putting to their peers. This approach results in no regular drain on agency resources or volunteer time, but care receivers receive the benefit of engaging in high-quality social connection. The fourth topic for today is the type of activity your volunteers perform while with their care receivers. We have a program called Home Song that sends teams of 2 musically inclined volunteers into the homes of care receivers who have expressed interest in participation. Currently, a team of a guitarist and a singer provide a session of singing, fun, and all the benefits that music brings to our brains and our bodies, mentioned separately as the benefits have been documented separately, everything from lower blood pressure to reduced levels of anxiety. I recently had the great pleasure of attending one of our home song sessions. I was the videographer, not the vocalist. The session was with a blind care receiver, and the word to describe it was joy. As he was blind, there was an amazing amount of recall with song lyrics, as the song book contained many oldies but goodies appropriate for the generation. The act of singing forced him to breathe deeply and expand his lungs as he projected his voice, especially for the big finishes. While this matching process looked a little different from the standard one that I described earlier, the agency investment is in the initial training, vetting of volunteers, supporting the volunteer home song leaders with office supplies such as copies of the music, and assisting with the coordination of interested care receivers. We are not claiming to be music therapists, as that is a highly sophisticated and respected profession, but we are pleased to use music as one of the ways we work to decrease loneliness as efficiently as possible. So I have a few closing thoughts before we open it up to questions, but these strategies were all based on research articles or supported by research. And a question that I often get asked is, where do we find the articles? And my advice is to let others do the work. Unless you have the time, let others do the work for you. Sign up for the most relevant newsletter updates for your specific area of interest. For me, mine include the John A. Hartford Foundation, AARP, who I know is represented here today, and the AmeriCorps Seniors updates. Yours, depending on your population, might look a little different from mine. Another great resource is to let others know that you are interested. Your coworkers, colleagues, members of the Board of Trustees, and donors. People really enjoy being helpful, and I will never turn down an article or a grant opportunity being passed along by someone else. I think that's one of the best kinds of support there is. So I hope you found the brief overview of some of our program interventions helpful. And at this time, I invite you to ask questions or share some of your thoughts or some of your innovative programs. Let's see.
Thank you, Dr. Winters, for this amazing presentation and for this insight into this interesting work. I was going to ask you about your strategies around sustainability. Investing in volunteers from the community seems like a very good strategy. You also spoke about funding agencies. Do you see a difference in approach when you are proposing an intervention that's based on research or evidence? Does it help when it comes to that?
Thank you so much for that question. And absolutely, it helps. The research that you're finding not only helps to make sure that what you're doing efficiently is most efficient, but I think maybe it's a conversation for another session, but I think we have an obligation that if anybody is going to give us funding to do something. We have an obligation to use their money to the best of their ability. In order to allow somebody to give us that money, we have to tell them why their money is going to be used in the most efficient manner. And the research articles, the research that is being done today, and I'm sure some of it is being done right there in your backyard, do nothing but support the need for our community-based services. The research alone on loneliness is incredible, and the ways that it doesn't take some high expensive approach or any in-depth equipment to fix. We're not buying MRI machines. We're trying to get care receivers and caregivers together over a plate of cookies. You know, so the health results can be just tremendous when looked at a very basic level. So yes, to answer your question, absolutely. And if we are in the position that we are grant seeking, then I believe it's our duty to convey that message clearly to the funder. Thank you for that.
Hi, I'm wondering if you could comment on exploring partnerships in your work. This program sounds amazing. I wonder if you think about that as a possible resource as well.
Thank you. Ms. Marilyn Mock, are you in the industry yourself?
Yes.
Are you local to us? Local to Mercer County?
No, we are actually in Camden, New Jersey. Okay,
so just down the road a little bit. Thank you for the question. We are finding that the more collaborations that happen, the better. We're lucky that we have, as I said, we don't do medical services. But we do have a lot of complementary organizations around us. We don't do meal delivery. Now our volunteers will help with grocery shopping assistance, but they're not delivering meals. So we're fortunate enough that we have very positive relationships with the great work that other agencies do that do provide meal delivery and that do provide medical assistance. So having those types of working relationships with complementary agencies just helps us use all of our resources better to most effectively serve our people. I'm looking at the chat. I love that question. Let me complete the thought. Uses our resources to help serve our population to the best of our ability. So yes, finding collaborations is very important. And it's something that increasingly, as there is more and more competition for funding, I'm starting to see on grant applications, people want to know, who are you collaborating with? What other agencies? So the funders want to see that you're not just working in a silo by yourself. You're not trying to solve the world's problems on your own, that you are open to collaboration. So that's something specifically that has been coming up more so, I think, in the past 2 years, or certainly after COVID. Okay, the question in the chat was to offer any suggested language that I use in grant requests to assist in securing funding that combats loneliness and isolation. And how do we find volunteers? Okay, so how do we find volunteers? My time is, we have plenty of time for this. Wonderful. The title of our agency is Interfaith Caregivers of Greater Mercer County. And our roots were based in religious and organizations in different churches, different congregations. So it was leaders of these congregations that noticed there was a need for services in the community and received a seed grant from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and Faith in Action grant. And since then, we've been largely fortunate to get our volunteers out of various congregation and religious institutions. It's worked out because if you look at consistency throughout the different realm of religions. Helping each other, serving your neighbor is a very common theme. So we do not proselytize. We do not, nobody has to be of a certain faith. We will not push our faith on you. We will not ask you any questions about your faith. But for us as an agency, that desire to serve others has always been, we've always been connected with different congregations as a historic recruiting base for our volunteers. As we have grown and the needs have grown, we have also we also recruit in the community at different health fairs and community centers. We will not say no to any volunteers. We're on volunteer match. So again, while we are connected to our congregations as a traditional source of volunteers, people wanting to do good, we are not exclusive to only church-going people or only religious people. Last year, we recruited at eight different religions throughout the course of just the first year after COVID. So we really are as inclusive as we can be. So that's how we find our volunteers. A little bit of begging and pleading too always helps. But the suggested language, I think the more you can paint your picture, I don't think whether you're applying for funding, and some of this I think takes a little bit of time and expertise, but whether you're writing for a grant from a bank or writing for a grant from a private foundation or for the federal government, maybe to varying degrees, but people want to know your story. If they have a foundation or they have a grant opportunity, they have to give you money. They have to give away their money. So you need to do your job of painting your story as clearly as possible. So the more information you can have about why it's not just, oh, grandma's sad, or, oh, you know, she doesn't talk on the phone anymore. It's so much more than that. We're avoiding trips to the emergency room. You know, it's a whole thing now. They're studying loneliness as social isolation, and loneliness now is leading to only crisis-based care for emergency rooms, because people don't have someone to take them to the doctor. They don't have someone to get their regular prescriptions, so they're not able to follow their doctor's advice. So now the only time they really get to see the doctor is when it's a crisis and they're in the ER. So now ERs are flooded with this population, the potentially homebound population or isolated population. So the more you can be familiar with all the different angles of it, the better you can match, which do I think could appeal to, would most connect with this particular funder. And some of that you can kind of gauge by just doing your research on the background. But I will have my contact information. I think it's up there already, but if you want more brainstorming on that, I'm happy to help. What counties do your programs serve? Well, we are Greater Mercer County, and what that means is we serve throughout Mercer County, and our services have kind of bled over into the surrounding communities of Burlington County and a little bit into Middlesex County. So we are a small agency. We're growing, but we can only serve as many people as we have volunteers for. So there's such a need all over. We'd love to be able to help as many people as possible, but before you have to also recognize the limitations. It's better to serve the people and serve them well within your area before you start overextending your resources, and then you're not serving anybody well. So that's where we are in Mercer County. Any other questions? I appreciate the ones that I've gotten. As you can see, I get very excited about what we do, and that's, because of the feedback, because of the success stories. The last session I was in, they were able to share a couple of success stories, and it's wonderful. And I'm sure each of us could go up and down the Zoom board and share success stories or the reasons why we do it, or our inspiration, because that's what gets us excited. And the more we can have that conveyed in what we are writing and the stories that we are telling, the easier it is going to be to get people on board with supporting our causes.
There is one thing I would like to just highlight that I think Carla did a beautiful job in conveying in her presentation, and I think we can all appreciate, given the recent history. But the services that the volunteers provide traditionally have been seen as sort of an intervention to combat existing social isolation and loneliness. But what everyone is discovering and is being promoted more and more is that the social isolation and loneliness can be avoided through activities like engaging in volunteerism and community engagement. And so it is both on both sides of this relationship that you see real benefit happening. And we hear that over and over in our surveys with our volunteers that, oftentimes they'll say, I feel a little guilty being a volunteer because I feel like I get more out of this relationship than I give. And that is very well documented. You can find that through the National Institutes of Health, the National Institutes on Aging, the Surgeon General. All of it is pointing towards community engagement through activities like volunteerism that is acting as a strategy to sustain a high level of quality of life and to avoid the health detriments of social isolation and loneliness. So it works both as an intervention and as a prevention tool.
Okay. Well, I see it's our time to leave the breakout room. Thank you for your participation. My contact information, and it will be listed in the handouts. And if you could think of anything else, please feel free to contact me. Good luck to everybody here. Thank you again.